Is there something like new that's happening that has suddenly, triggered the market and like a lot of people have started thinking about this and you got interested in this?
Do you want to go play on the
Oh, dude!
OMG?
Interesting.
You take the world's most intelligent model, feed it with bad context, it ends up behaving like a 2-year-old in production, right?
Yeah. You're gonna see a world where there are gonna be these small multimodal models that are gonna capture inputs through voice and text, but in real time. I think it's also not just a voice problem; it's also a memory and context problem.
Sudarshan,
Good. How are you?
all good. Are you excited for the weekend?
Yeah, I had a very long week, like literally back-to-back customer calls, investor meetings, setting up the team, interviews. I'm just like super exhausted. I'm basically gonna go on like a short trip or something somewhere, try to clear my mind and figure out what to do for the next week. How about you?
Amazing. Same plans, but I think the grind never stops.
What are you working on these days?
We're building the infrastructure that allows companies to build memory layers on top of us. So the idea is that generally, as agents become more intelligent, they would need some form of like state management internally, and we are building the infrastructure that allows you to build your own flavor of a memory layer or a memory application on top of us.
That's very interesting. Like, where did you get this idea from?
So the idea basically originated from when I was previously working on a couple of things. I realized that we weren't limited by the capabilities of the models. Like initially we were experimenting with GPT 3.5, but there was so much happening in the foundational model space that you could anticipate that even though today we have GPT 3.5, tomorrow we'll get GPT 5, day after it'll be GPT 10. And inherently, like there's no ceiling to how much intelligence can be like given to these models. But you take the world's most intelligent model, feed it with bad context, it ends up behaving like a 2-year-old in production, right?
Yeah.
It breaks your JSONs, breaks your workflows, expectations, consistency, nothing really works. But that same model, like you take a very average model, you feed it with high quality, rich context, it far outperforms and exceeds all your expectations. So given this, all of this like research happening in the model space, we realized that models will inherently get better, but there needs to be a company that's solving the context problem for AI. So we decided to just like go into this direction.
Very interesting. Like, I remember like memory has always been something that people have been talking about for a very long time.
Yeah.
Is there something like new that's happening that has suddenly, triggered the market and like a lot of people have started thinking about this and you got interested in this?
Yeah. I think memory for the longest time has been a really, really important.
Nice. Yeah.
I think memory for the longest time has been really important for any form of application. But what has recently started triggering these like causes in enterprises is that people have started realizing that vector databases on top of which we were very reliant don't work at scale in production. The idea is that a vector database, simply put, is like a very oversimplistic explanation is it's an HNSW index combined with a search algorithm, right? Those indices are not able to take care of like how over time something is evolving, user preferences, likes, dislikes, outcomes across sessions and all of those things. Take for example like the simplest of words, right? So in any of the companies I've ever worked at, no one has ever called me by my full name Nishkarsh. People have said, hey Nish, how are you? Hey N, how are you? A vector DB inherently doesn't remember that Nish is a person, Nish is like this entity, right?
Yeah.
I think all of these problems coming into light and the recent like I think the most popular paper by Stanford was like the semantic collapse paper, which talks about how after 10,000 documents, everything crashes. These things engineers are generally becoming more aware of these things, and therefore they're looking for alternatives to build on top of.
Interesting. Okay. I started thinking about this as you were talking, and I realized like memory has always been there. Initially, the idea was databases, and then there were these massive database companies that were built, and then there was vector databases, which seemed like a whole new thing. But very quickly, people came to realize that, that's not going to scale.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what is different in this technology that's coming right now in memory? in terms of like innovation? What unlock has made memory possible right now, which initially the databases and knowledge bases did not have? I know you spoke about the properties of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I think the biggest unlock so far, and like the internet has basically coined it as context graphs, but it's essentially like a fancy way to say that, oh, I have the world's best knowledge graph. I think in general, being able to realize that, okay, memory cannot be thought of as a thin abstraction over a vector database. That's like a general awareness problem that's being resolved in real time with a replacement of like a context graph per se, right? So in every node, so essentially, you're creating like a system of record over all the entities, over all the information, over all the context that's being flown through the system, and then you're able to meticulously like understand, oh, what's the relationship between these two entities? How do you resolve this entity? How is this connected to that decision, right? And agents being able to recall,
I think I'll take our ice cream.
go. Yeah, I mean, agents being able to recall why a decision was taken is more important than like what the decision was, right? Because sometimes decisions can be incorrect, sometimes they can be correct, but all of these things have to be recorded, and they're like very unstructured in your Slack conversations, emails, and all of those things. So I think generally, like this shift from using a flat index to like a much more robust graphing solution is what most companies like even Glean are doing right now. And I think that's the major unlock because of which these things are now possible.
How do you think about what should be trained in the model layers and stored in like the memory of the model, so called, versus the actual context graph,
Yeah.
Especially in light of all the recent developments in small models and real time models?
I think what's important for models to remember at this point in time is like the parametric functions of the model itself, right? So if a user tells the model that, oh, I like hot coffee, the model should respond by saying, that's a great choice of beverage, right? You don't need any form of external locus of attention to be able to tell the user that, oh, why is this a great choice or a bad choice of beverage, right? If a user tells, now I have a cold, the model shouldn't inherently ask them to drink more soda. Like that's given, right? That's a parametric reflex action to that statement. I think this base layer of intelligence is what most companies are now developing with smaller models. So like smaller models will be extremely specialized to handle like one specific workflow, right? So if it's a sales model, then it knows how to extract sales intelligence. If it's a model built to just write product tickets, it knows reflexively how to do that, right? I think that sort of like memory should be built within like the purview of that model, and anything that requires special or additional attention should be outside of the model.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the way I think of it as well is, the efficiency of intelligence is also important. Just because, you can store everything in the model layer does not mean you should. What that leads to is basically inflexibility in learning. Like if you're doing continual learning and things like that, you're not able to do that very quickly in the model layers because of catastrophic forgetting. But you can keep updating memory. So the model, if it relies on memory for external context, it can itself, quickly, just remember the preferences and update itself on the preferences, but it will still rely on memory for the actual facts, basically, if I have to put it.
That makes sense. I mean, this also brings up the whole debate around like transformers versus SSMs,
Yeah.
how much context should be given, how much context should be retained. But I think that's an interesting space to just like understand and figure out use case wise. But yeah, there's some interesting developments there.
Interesting. What do you think about the whole recursive language models, and that breaks down basically large, context into smaller problem statements? Does that basically does that lead to context graphs in some sense? Because now each of these smaller problem statements can refer to very localized contexts and basically, use that for solving the bigger problem.
I mean, like a mixture of recursions or a mixture of experts, like all of these things are basically like different ways in which you could handle a given problem statement, right? I think recursions like specifically are not helpful for a given problem statement, specifically talking about like context. Like recursions are not helpful for context, right? Because context is so diversified. What I mean to say by that is when I say the word, or when I say let's say when I say the word Apple, right? Apple previously just meant a fruit, right? Now it means a company. Similarly, if I say the word strawberry, it could mean a fruit, but you go to projects and enterprise projects and they would name their projects like Project Strawberry, which means reducing API latencies by 30%, right? And the thing is, like, even a token representation of these things doesn't lead to anything meaningful over time, right? So like recursions and all of these things are not helpful when you're specifically like when you're like very specifically dealing with unstructured enterprise knowledge bases. I'm sure there are other applications where the dictionary meaning of things don't change over time. So you could break it down and figure out different components together. But when the dictionary meaning across two silos is not the same, like recursions are not helpful.
Interesting. Yeah, I was speaking to someone yesterday, and they literally what they were talking about was not just the um, actual like information is always contextual.
Yeah.
So imagine like you have to take a decision whether you want to buy something or not, and you ask like a AI whether you should buy it based on what it thinks about the state of the company, etc., whether this resource will be useful for the company. If it has all the previous decisions that were taken in the company all traced out,
Yeah.
right? This is every single decision that has ever been taken in the
Yeah.
company by this person. This is the structure of the company because of which that has resulted from these decisions. It can then actually decide much better
Yeah.
than just like having this as like a finite, intelligence without any sort of context,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, the traceability of, I don't know how to put it in words, but I guess like the traceability of decisions in an enterprise or regardless in any application, in my mind, is what memory consists of. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah. Before that, is this person looking for a founding engineer role?
This was a VC.
Oh,
Surprisingly technical VC.
are
Yeah.
they looking for business development roles? The idea here is, I mean, it's very right that every piece of information is extremely contextual. So why should one piece of context be utilized over another piece of context is more important than you having access to that context. Because in a very likely scenario where you don't even get the right context, you can just end up saying that, oh, I don't know what the right answer is, and then there's some course correction that can happen. So yeah, I think these decisions are important. And like interestingly, I've spoken to so many enterprise folks at this point in time. I think the number one complaint anyone has up until now is that people actively avoid dumping all the information and knowledge that they have because they want to gatekeep it to some extent, right? So they will not document it properly in like a
Yeah.
Jira ticket or like a Google document. They would rather message someone or
Yeah.
share this information over email, right?
Yeah.
So that becomes a much bigger gold mine compared to what you actually can extract from like
Yeah.
these sources.
So with agents doing more and more work, do you see like a standard protocol required to store the trace of an agent so that it can be accessed by memory? Like imagine like there are millions of agents in the work, each of them like taking actions, and it's
Yeah.
like literally a sequence of
Yeah.
actions over like various tools, right? How does another agent come to know that this agent did all of this? Because now you're talking about a world where human and AI agents work together. So do we need like a standard protocol of saving information which can be globally accessed for memory to become useful?
Yeah, I mean, this is where like the whole notion of a graph serving your purpose is much better than using a flat index. So the idea is, I mean, what I believe is going to happen is right now there's a transition where humans hand off some work to an agent, and then that agent goes and like figures it out. I think we are definitely with like these newer OpenClaw and all of these things, what we've noticed is that agents are now running 24/7 autonomously, right? You give them a goal, they figure it out. They'll even suggest you what steps you could take next pertaining to like a given problem statement, right? I think the future of this is, and if you look at it like, basically these things are now running their own agents under the hood. So you'll have like a master agent running like a bunch of minions under the hood, and these minions take control, they do a task, report back to the master, and the master coordinates. So like if you think about it, a human being is already being moved out of the loop, right? So the master has to coordinate with its minions to be able to make sure that the job is being done. in like the next few years, what's going to happen and what I believe in is there will be millions of agents running millions of workflows across enterprises, and these agents will be able to proactively anticipate based on historical data, based on past context, that okay, this is the driver function of moving this company forward. So there'll be like a top layer executive orchestration layer of agents that could figure out the driver functions, and they would redistribute the load to the minions under them, and then it'll keep like trickling down unless and until some worker node gets the job done. And they need like they need like a shared, like a hive memory of sorts, that oh, this was the executive decision, this was the driver function, this is the tweak or the knob that needs to be tuned for us to get this job done. So I mean, all of this memory will be trickled down to everyone, and yeah, I mean, that's a completely different data structure compared to just storing everything in one flat layer.
Interesting. I think a lot of innovation in memory is gonna come from how can you efficiently not look at every single trace
Yeah.
across every single action every single human or AI agent has taken,
Yeah.
but instead abstract out that in some form, and I don't know what form that will look like, so that you can efficiently take decisions. Because I feel, imagine like you have agents coming up now, you can obviously spin up more agents compared to humans.
Yeah.
Now, if you start storing every single piece of action these
Yeah.
agents take, and they can run 24/7, they can clone themselves or whatever, right? We are going to basically run out of storage maybe extremely quickly, which also makes maybe me bullish on storage companies.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is it's gonna be extremely difficult to go look at that data and like figure out what's happened quickly, because you have so much information that's being stored.
Yeah. I think the key here is to realize that not all information should be stored at once, and not all information, like you said, should be retrieved. I think there needs to be like a very strong time decay allocated to all of these pieces of context, right? So I think the best example I like to give here is when you were 5 years old, there could have been some really happy moment or incident that might have happened with you, but like 20 years into the future, you don't remember it, right? Unless someone recalls it for you, and then you're like instantly like narrating the entire incident, and like you know the details of it. So in a way, if you think about it, the human brain has been functioning like this. You don't always remember everything, but you also don't forget everything that has happened with you per se. It's sort of like hot memory, cold storage, and then like these things migrate between like different layers of storage in our brain. And yeah, that's how I think that's how like a literal memory layer should also function, and like it should be intelligent enough to realize that not all there will be like a local maxima with respect to the context you are interacting with, and that local maxima makes sure that it's like always available. Then there is a global maxima where sustainably memories that are invoked over time, continuously stay active. But then there'll be like a trove of memories that will never be invoked, and they should be forgotten. Not in the traditional sense that you delete them, but you should be able to invoke them when the time is right, or when the lexical match is extremely strong. There's like a couple of signals you can index on, right?
I don't know. I mean, I'm of two minds here, right? One is you could try to mimic human memory,
Yeah.
which is, as you said, has a time decay. Or you could say, hey, we are gonna take a divergence from human memory and make it like even better. So
Yeah.
you're gonna have that piece of memory which is more efficiently stored, which is time decayed. But you
Yeah.
have something like a cold storage,
Yeah.
which is basically storing every single piece of information ever.
Yeah.
And we figure out a way to basically have infinite memory.
Yeah.
Like like imagine like storing like every single time step across every single particle in the universe.
Yeah.
Like what would that take to store? Right? Like theoretically, if we could do that, like and theoretically, if you had a machine that could compute on top of that, you
Yeah.
can basically solve any problem extremely accurately.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we spoke a lot about you. Talk about me.
Do you want to go play on the
Oh, dude.
OMG?
Do you want to?
No. There has to be some science to stop you from going on it.
Okay,
So-
fine.
What about I think speaking on the subject of like context, memory, and storing everything that has ever been said, and if we figure it out, well, that would be great computationally speaking. I think a lot of context is still missed out because verbally what's discussed is equally as important, if not more, compared to like how like companies, businesses, enterprises, and like our real lives also function, right? Like you tell your I don't know, your significant other to get like a grocery list or grocery thing done. You tell your team members to get something done on an urgent basis. Like that's not documented ever. But that's very important because if their agent has context on the fact that this thing has a deadline now, which is tomorrow, maybe their agent can proactively figure out how to get it done before they get a chance to do it, right? Like how is this happening right now? How are we capturing this modality? What do you think enables us to capture this modality?
Yeah. No, I think voice is really important because I think most of the context in the world, at least like the most important context, still happens in voice. The only reason we let's say when we meet in person, we like talking more is because voice is the preferred mode of communication for humans. What that means for agents is like if it has to ever become as intelligent as humans, it has to also understand voice and it has to capture context that occurs in the spoken modality. For that to happen, it's really important that we build models that can uh, store human spoken information extremely efficiently. And so yeah, that's an important problem statement that we are working on. We see voice as a modality that's growing rapidly. Most people are speaking to AI agents through voice. What also ends up happening is these agents are extremely fast and quick. They can answer in real time, and then they're also the best way to sort of utilize small models to do that quick processing. So in my mind, like we're gonna see a world where there are gonna be these small multimodal models that are gonna capture inputs through voice and text, but in real time, quick, are asynchronous to do input output, which means that they can reply to you while you're talking to it, just like humans.
And how does that happen though? Like currently, if I talk to Chat GPT, for example, right, I can feel a physical
Yeah.
latency between what I'm trying to ask
Yeah.
versus what it's trying to answer. Like,
And that's the big flaw of LLMs, right? That's what Jan LeCun talks about. That's exactly why LLMs will not scale because they require full context, which means like you have to give in the entire input at once to basically start decoding and thinking. Even like do a single step of computation, you need the full context. But that's not how humans operate. Humans take in pieces of information uh, in a time series manner, which means like you already start thinking when you hear the first word come out of my mouth, right? So you're already processing what I've been saying for the last 10 seconds.
yeah.
So you have some thought in your mind that has formed already, and at any point of time you think I'm talking too much, you're gonna kind of try to interrupt me, right? So you can actually interrupt without even me finishing.
That
So,
makes
so
yeah.
the human brain is like a finite state machine that basically keeps taking in input and keeps forming intermittent latent vectors, if I have to simplify it, which is thoughts, and then has a probability with which it might give out outputs. Again, asynchronously. It does not have to wait for the input stream to stop for the outputs to come out.
I mean,
On
that
top-
makes sense. Yeah. So,
and it
yeah.
conditions itself again on its own output. So
Yeah.
you talk, you can listen to your own talk.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I like doing that.
Yeah.
So in a way, you're saying like we're in a constant state of flux where our thoughts are continuously being formed and destroyed, and we are anticipating what the next best
Exactly. We are
response should
always
be.
predicting what the future is going to be. You're going to predict what's going to happen, right? Like, for example, if I throw a ball to your face, you're going to try to catch it, right?
Yeah,
Because you're expecting the ball to come and hit you.
that makes
And that's the prediction of the future state that you have.
unless I'm Flash and I'm dodging it in the
Yes.
past.
Sure. But imagine what happens when you don't end up catching it, right? Imagine what happens if the ball hits your face.
Yeah.
You're gonna learn quickly that something is wrong with your your hand-brain coordination, and you're gonna next time try to improve your hand position quickly.
Yeah.
Right. So human beings operate asynchronously are predicting the state of the world and are continuously learning if the predictions go wrong. That's a major flaw with how LLMs operate today, where they basically never learn during inference, and they also need full context, and they operate synchronously.
And where are we right now with this in place? Like, what's the current, like, I know I understand like the current state of LLMs and everything, but
Yeah.
like, in terms of building this next step function change of how
We are
models-
very early. We are very early. We have a concept in voice called full duplex models, which is basically exploring this. What full duplex means is the input voice can keep coming in, and the output voice is like not dependent on the input voice coming in. It can like literally give an output.
so they're detached from each other.
Yeah, they're detached
independent.
from each other. They can basically, it can talk while you are talking as well. And those models are very early. We have a full duplex model called Hydra that we are releasing, but they're not yet at the state where they could kind of take over the capacity of current LLMs in terms of thoughts. And but what's incredible is they're extremely fast.
Right on cue.
Yeah, see? Did not wait
That's a
for me
sign.
to stop talking.
That's a sign. Hydra.
Yeah.
And where are we? Like, so the current state. I had expected it to stop.
Ye- it has,
It's still going.
It's, yeah. It's just probably
Amazing.
what if it goes into like a rap right now? Okay.
And where do you think is like, so the current state of like these models is that they're not built on the full duplex architecture that you spoke about, and where on a time scale, like what do you think is the state, or what do you envision when these models come out? They would actually be what's the time to adopt these models when they actually come out in their full capacity, full strength? How long do you think the world will until the world realizes they need this?
It'll be a big shift. You're literally talking about completely having a brand new experience. Like every single API that is getting consumed for voice, like completely changing. Obviously, it wouldn't be overnight, but what we have seen, see, voice is not something that is new, right? Like we've always had IVR. We've always had the old, boring, robotic voices. Why is voice AI like growing right now? Because it's becoming more realistic, more human-like, lower latencies. It is actually smart. It understands context. Now, with that full duplex, asynchronous thinking, continual learning coming in, you're basically accelerating this quality, this next level of intelligence that we have seen right now to another level, which is human-like or even smarter. You're gonna see an inflection which is faster than the current voice AI, adoption has seen over the last 1 or 2 years. So I think whenever it happens, whenever we reach that point where this passes the Turing test, which it has not yet, I think it's also not just a voice problem, it's also a memory and context problem. So it's got to be voice plus memory. When this sort of unlock happens, it's completely going to change how humans talk to AI.
I think one of the best industries to benefit from this would be AI role playing.
Yeah.
And what do you think is the
Yeah.
and which industry do you think outside of this one is going to be impacted the most? Like, is it BFSI?
Impacted the most.
Is it healthcare?
I think the most that would get impacted are personal relationships. because you're gonna be talking to your AI a lot more than you're gonna talking.
Can I make my AI apologize to other people?
Even I mean, it depends on what it likes or dislikes.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it depends on your memory. Yeah.
Amazing.